The Heart of It.
Roy West kicking in towards the centre.
A distinctly Tasmanian conversation.
I can feel what it will be like when Tassie plays his first game, and I just...
Lynch gathers, he's got loose men everywhere, but he decides to have a pump shot, and it's an absolute ripper! 200 goals for Peter Hudson. What a fantastic effort.
How did he do that? Bear kick finishes off in style.
Up towards half forward, Stewart flying over the top. Oh, pulled in a beautiful mark.
Well done from Scott. After all, Sheriff's got the first goal. Has it gone?
Nichols has had the big ruck with it. Oh! Close wall.
G'day, welcome to The Heart of It. As a breeding ground for greats of Australian rules football, Tasmania has a rich and proud history. Royce Hart, Peter Hudson, Ian Stewart and Darryl Baldock are all legends of the Australian Football Hall of Fame. While their deeds in the Victorian Football League drew nationwide acclaim, there were many other gifted Tasmanian footballers during that era who chose to remain on the island. There just weren't the modern-day incentives to pack up and leave. Arguably the greatest of the Tassie crop to never play in the VFL was the mercurial and entertaining North Launceston and North Hobart champion, John Leedham. Leedham, the vice-captain of Tasmania's team of the century, represented the state at 3 national carnivals and was our first ever All-Australian in 1953. Those that saw him or were lucky enough to play alongside him were in awe of his talent and match-winning qualities. This year, Leedham took his rightful place in the Australian Football Hall of Fame. In this episode of The Heart of It, John's daughter Pippa Robertson and her husband Chris reflect on the storied career of the great JL. Pippa and Chris, it is lovely to be speaking with you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Alistair.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Can you talk to me about how significant it is an honour for your family to have your dad finally inducted into the Australian Football Hall of Fame?
It was amazing. It was just truly a fabulous night, and it was just amazing for our family to get the recognition that we feel he deserved. It was second to none. And I remember Dad saying years ago when he went in as an icon, he said, "Oh, well, there's nothing more I can do. I've gone as high as I can." And we sort of, yep, that's right. And then to get this wonderful honour and to have us all there, it was fabulous. We really, really enjoyed it. And we thought it was very due for Dad, and it was so nicely done. So it was great.
Brilliant. And so that was when he was made an icon of the Tasmanian Football Hall of Fame. Your dad thought, well, that's about as high honour as you can get.
Yeah, he did. He said, and you could see in his face, he said, yep, that's it. I sort of can't go any higher. And then, we were fortunate enough to get the call and from Richard, and it was pretty emotional because when you really delve into what Dad's done, what he did, it's quite amazing, and you sort of think, yeah, he probably it was deserved for him. So it was a wonderful night, and we felt very privileged to be part of it.
So tell me, Richard Goyder, the chairman of the AFL, he's the one who makes the call to you to let you know that your dad is posthumously going into the Australian Football Hall of Fame. Can you describe your immediate reaction, what happened, what you said, if you could speak?
Yeah, well, I was actually picking up Arthur, my grandson, and I'm sitting outside the school waiting, and I got the phone call and I thought, oh, who's this? And he sort of said, hello, Pippa, it's Richard. And he went through what his position was, and he said, look, we would dearly love to induct your father into the AFL Hall of Fame. And I did start to cry because I think for a couple of reasons, it would be lovely for Dad to have been here. And that was my first thought. And I said that to Richard, oh, that's just amazing, but it would be just wonderful if he was here. But yeah, it was a really nice phone call. So I floated down to the school to pick up us. Yeah, it was a really nice feeling. It was very, very nicely done.
And did Pippa quickly pick up the phone to you, Chris, and let you know?
Yeah, she did. She rang me sort of straight away, and we weren't sort of thinking that that sort of thing would happen after the icon induction, because John loved the Tasmanian, anything Tasmanian footy, particularly North Hobart, but the whole Tasmanian thing. So in his eyes, I guess he didn't think that anything else would happen like this. So yeah, when we got the news and Pippa rang me, I thought that's just absolutely fantastic for the family, and it's a shame John's not here, but I'm sure he would have loved the honour.
Yeah, absolutely. It puts him in the company of the greatest to have played the game, and he absolutely deserves to be there. If you look at his playing record and what he did at carnivals and the premierships he won, and the mere fact he's an icon of the Tasmanian Football Hall of Fame and the vice captain and ruck rover in the Tassie team of the century. So do you think the fact that he never went to the big league and actually played VFL football might have counted against him, in that people weren't as aware of, modern people at least, weren't as aware of what he achieved in football?
Yeah, look, that's possibly the case, and I guess that's what the perception would be from a lot of people that wouldn't have known how good John was. A lot of people obviously did, and the fact that they refer to he was the best player that never went to the VFL. I don't think that really matters, in the sense that those people that knew how good he was, even the players in Victoria that he played against, it didn't really matter, because John knew, and everyone else did, that if he went to the VFL, as it was in those days, that he would have more than comfortably held his own and starred in that competition. And he showed it in the state games here against Victoria, Western Australia, and Adelaide, particularly in 1953 in the Carnival.
Yeah, first ever All-Australian team, and he was part of it, the first Tasmanian. So I can't wait to chat to you both about some of the football stories, his recollections, all of those things. But first, I want you to listen to what some of his fellow Tasmanians had to say about him, some of the greatest of all time. So Peter Hudson, also Trevor Leo, who never went to the VFL as well, but was a highly respected former Tasmanian player and coach. And then also the Brownlow medalist Verdon Howe. This is what they thought of your father, Pippa, as a footballer.
Like, to me, there was only a cigarette paper between him and Darryl.
Wow.
But that's only my opinion. He was one of those sort of, he probably the player that I've seen in my lifetime that was very much like him was Greg Williams. They always seem to be able to get the ball, A. B, they always seem to have so much time to do whatever they wanted to do. I mean, I would say that he would have been able to do anything he wanted to do in the VFL if he'd made the move.
Magical, unpredictable. He could do things that people wouldn't have thought of. If I was picking a centre-half forward, I think I'd pick Leedham. He was magical because he's 6'2". He could compete in the air. We played Victoria at North Hobart, and I think it was 57. And Victoria had three players, John Brady, Bill Toomey and Peter Box, at key positions. Leedham was playing centre-half forward. After quarter time, they moved Brady off him and put Toomey on him. He killed Toomey, so they put Box on him. He killed him, so they went back to Brady. But he just, they couldn't touch him once he got the ball.
He was just blessed with balance. He mesmerised for guys. He'd get the ball and they go, and next minute he's over here. And he had his body movement. He was a big fellow too. He wasn't a small man, but he was so hard to put a parcel together. How you're going to play him? Because you could do everything. He could kick and mark, and he could run. And he was a very smart football brain.
How, Pippa, does it make you feel to hear those greats of Tasmanian football describe your dad in such a way?
Yeah, and they are great. So they're certainly part of our football history here in Tassie. Pretty amazing when you have the respect of those three wonderful players. And it's really nice to hear that feedback from them, because they saw him and they got to play against him or with him, and yeah, it makes you feel pretty special. Like we've only, well, for me, I only hear the stories that Dad shared, and I've read, articles out of scrapbooks, but to hear those players of that calibre speak so highly of Dad, it's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, and when Peter Hudson's saying that, you'd split Darryl Baldock, a legend of the AFL, and your dad by a cigarette paper in terms of who was the better player, and your dad's only just gone into the Australian Football Hall of Fame, and Peter Hudson's a legend and Darryl Baldock's a legend, so it's long overdue. That's fair to say. What have you learnt about your dad as a footballer? Because obviously when he was in his prime, you were too young to see him, weren't you? When he was playing for North Launceston in the late 40s, and then with North Hobart in the 50s, and all those state carnivals he represented Tasmania in as well.
Yeah, you're right. I was too young to see Dad play. Jeff Poulter used to say you'd walk into a pub in Hobart, and if you said something like John Leedham couldn't play football, it was just on for young and old. There was a huge discussion, that John Leedham couldn't play football. But I think for Dad, what I've learned, he was a showman. He was an entertainer. He had flair. He was cheeky. And for his time, he was a bit of a modern day sledger who chatted opponents and umpires alike. Definitely chatted umpires. He didn't always look the classical part. He was a little bit unorthodox, socks down, left footer. He wasn't graceful or stylish, but he had other vital attributes that made him unbeatable when he was on song. And I think he enjoyed the crowd as much as they enjoyed him.
Yeah. He grew up in Campbelltown, didn't he? Do you know much about his family background, his upbringing in Campbelltown?
Yeah, he grew up on a farm just a bit out of Campbelltown. His mum was a single mum, and we didn't get to meet her. Unfortunately, she passed away when Dad was quite young. And when he went to Campbelltown at the age of 17, Dad had never really picked up a football. Like, he didn't have a football. He on his push bike, he would ride from out in the country in to play footy. So yeah, I think he played something like three games with Campbelltown, and then he went up to a club called City South, which isn't around anymore. I think it might be South Launceston. Yep. And a lot of people probably don't know this. And City South, the chairman said, "Oh, you won't get a game here, mate. Perhaps go and try North Launceston." And so Dad wouldn't have cared. He just would have gone to the first club that came up in front of him. So he did go to North Launceston, and the rest is history.
That period coincided with an enormous period of success for North Launceston. Extraordinary to think that they won 5 consecutive premierships, and John was part of all of them. They also won 3 state premierships during that period, didn't they, from 46 to 50?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and John used to talk fondly about those years. At 46, I think, was his first premiership with North Launceston. He also had those players like Rattler Summers and Gavin Luttrell, who unknowingly to John were mentors for him. I mean, he said to me they were some of the hardest players he'd ever seen. And, particularly Gavin Luttrell and Rattler Summers, they led from the front. John was a witness to that and played under that. And John said to me, he was very grateful for that period of time, because he learned so much from them. Back in those days, they didn't mean it wasn't a mentor role, but that's what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And he very much enjoyed that success, particularly in 53, when he went to the carnival and came second in the Tassie medal and won Australian honours. He was, I think Merv McIntosh won the Tassie medal from Western Australia. John was second to that. But certainly those formative years in North Launceston, where he had a lot of success, state premierships and premierships, as you mentioned, he was very much proud of. I think his heart lay with North Hobart ultimately, that the success he had with North Launceston was sort of, in the rear vision mirror to some degree, because his allegiance and heart lay at North for those North Hobart years that he played.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So he grows up in Campbelltown, has enormous success at the North Launceston Football Club, and then he moves to North Hobart, where he plays in the 57 flag, but from 54 to 59, he's at North Hobart. How did that decision to go there come about, and why did North Hobart become his place of great affection when all that success was tasted at North Launceston as well?
Yeah, North approached him while he was having all that success at North Launceston. They knew they needed a utility player, an impact player, someone to lead and coach the club. They desperately needed. That was the hole for them that they needed to fill. So, they identified that John was the man, I think, early in the piece. And I don't think it took a lot of convincing for him to come down. It was pretty much, a done deal fairly quickly. So he was more than happy to come down. And North Hobart fitted John, and John fitted North Hobart. Because back in those days, North was, a blue-collar sort of footy club, with die-hard people. And John was a country boy from Campbelltown that grew up, at the school just doing kick to kick. That was his first introduction to football at the Campbelltown school. And so that fit was probably very good for both. And he was very comfortable here and wanted success for North and just loved the club and didn't really see Tasmania and North Hobart were his major focus. He didn't really follow anything in the VFL or anything. The story when Tassie played Victoria and you had people like Bill Toomey came up to John and said, "Oh, you probably heard of me. My name's Bill Toomey." John said, "Never heard of you, mate." And then, kicked a couple of goals on him, and Toomey got moved, and put Brady on him. That didn't work either. And John, John wasn't being smart, but he didn't. The VFL wasn't any sights. It was North Hobart or Tassie. So, I think Bill Toomey said to him after the game, "You should go over to the VFL. You'd be a sensation over there." John said, "I'm doing pretty well here, mate. So I'm happy to stay in Tassie." And that's what John was like.
He did go over to Melbourne for a while, didn't he, Pippa? What happened there? Can you recount the story of his brief dalliance with the Melbourne Football Club?
Yeah, and sadly it was brief. Dad was invited to play with the Melbourne Football Club. He was invited to pre-season with them, and he did attend pre-season at Melbourne, along with, he reckons, probably 400 other likely footballers. So, there were 400 people there trying to get into this side, and Frank Checker Hughes was the coach at the time.
Legendary.
Yeah, and he said to Dad, he said, "Look, just do a couple of laps and then go in. They want to talk to you, just go in." And I think they were sort of saying, "Don't worry about the other 300 and whatever here, just get inside." And the president, I guess, spoke to Dad, and he said, "We'd like to talk to you and we'd like to sort of make an offer." And Dad tells this story very fondly, and he said, I don't want to talk money. I'm not interested in talking money at the moment. What I am interested in is you guarantee me 10 games in the centre, then we'll talk money." And that was what the deal was made on. And they agreed to give Dad 10 games in the centre, and then they talk money. Sadly, Dad did his knee. But on returning back to Tassie, he met my mum and married her.
What year would that have been?
48. 1948, yeah. When he was to pre-season.
So Melbourne's embarking on an extraordinary period of success, and they're prepared to offer your dad 10 games in the centre, having never played for the club. That's how they viewed him.
Yeah, that's and it was a written agreement with Dad, and he said, "We'll talk money after the 10 games." And I guess, it's not, Dad wasn't cocky. It was just, I think he trusted his own ability, and he knew that when needed, he could do what he wanted to do. So it was just that he knew, and he loved the game. So, yeah.
And people listening would go, well, he injured his knee and came back to Tassie, but then still had enormous success after he came back to Tasmania as well. In those days, it was very different, wasn't it? It wasn't like there was the financial reward to stay there and rehab your knee, even if it was, not an anterior cruciate or whatever. It was, you may as well come home because you weren't going to be paid enough money to warrant staying, and maybe had priorities back in Tasmania as well.
Yeah, well, and John spoke about that time. He said to me he's also a bit homesick as well. So to get the knee done, probably, it would have been something that he would have done. But he's probably keen to get back to Tassie as well, because it was a golden era of Tasmanian football, certainly here when John was certainly playing with North Hobart. There was a lot of good players here, and he said to me, I've seen a lot of good players that he rated very highly here in the south. He just had that focus of, I'll go back to Tassie and play footy here because that's what I want to do and that's what I like doing.
Yeah. You mentioned those great players. So state teams he played in, he played with Neil Conlon, he played with Stuart Spencer, Rex Garwood, Trevor Leo, Arthur Hodgson, Don Gale, to name a few. Did he talk about who he considered to be the great players of Tassie football from that era?
Yeah, he did. Those North Launceston players that I mentioned figured largely in our conversations. He really put, Gavin Luttrell and Rattler Summers, sort of, rated them very highly. Noel Clark was another one that he rated very highly. He mentioned the players down here. Barry Strange, I think, was one that he thought very highly of as well. But the thing with John was that he knew where he was going to move with the footy anyway. So everyone who thought he was going this way, John knew what he was doing with the football. Peter Hudson could read the ball in the air, but no one could catch John because he knew what he wanted to do with the football. He used to say to me, there's only two things in footy, Chris, and that's get the ball and do something with it. And I guess normal people who are good players, they might have 80% natural ability. John had a untapped well of natural ability. There was nothing pretty about it. It wasn't a great kick. He'd do those flat punts. And one of the players at North Hobart used to say, when John passed the ball to you with a flat punt, it nearly went through your chest. So as unnatural as it looked and as unnatural as his movements were, he knew how to evade players. And one of his great mates, Bray Westwood, said to him once when I was there around the bar at North Hobart, he said, why didn't you ever try and practice on your non-preferred side of your body, John? So I didn't have to. I never got caught right anyway. It doesn't matter. And he wasn't being bragging or anything. He was just answering the question. John was far from, he's quite a humble guy from that point of view. It was very interesting. But yes, most of those players, to answer your question, they were North Launceston players, and some of the players down south he had great tussles with.
Yeah.
Particularly with Glenorchy. He rated them fairly highly, some of those players.
So he captain coached Tasmania in 1958. Many think that 1960, the win over Victoria, is perhaps Tassie's most famous victory, but I guess the roots of it lay in that performance at the Carnival of 58 when, Pippa, your dad is the captain coach and Tassie beats the best from South Australia and Western Australia. Do you remember, two-part question, what it meant to him to pull on the Tasmanian jumper with the map on it, and also the significance of those victories over South Australia and Western Australia?
Again, from what I've read and what Dad's told us around the dinner table, it was a huge honour, and that definitely was his best carnival. And I recall when he was captain and coach, Dad saying that in those days the coach actually had a say in who would be playing in the side. George Miller came up to him and he said, we picked the side, we're ready to go. And he said, well, I hope you do really well over there because I'm not going. Because he hadn't been involved in picking the side. And that was what Dad was like. He wouldn't have gone. Anyway, they quickly got him in and he had his input and he went and he had such a fabulous carnival.
George Miller was an administrator and a North Hobart player and administrator, and also interstate, and looked after the state team as well. And they were in the change rooms actually. And he said to John, well, pick the team and see you on Friday. And John said, well, hope it goes well. I won't be there. And that's word for word what John said to me, what he told him. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm captain coach. I didn't have a say in picking the team, so I'm not going. I'm not going to be responsible for what happens if I'm not. And so George, had a little bit of think about it and decided that probably would be a good idea to invite John's input.
Fair call.
Yeah.
What were some of his other great footy stories that sort of legendary within the family?
So this is one of my favourite stories, and it's very much Dad. Like through his whole life, this is what Dad was like. And a young footballer came down from Launceston, and he was to study law at the university, and his name was Ray Bailey. And he recalls his first game for North Hobart under Dad, and he was about 17, and he had experienced nothing like it. And this particular Saturday, North were playing Glenorchy, their arch rival, and they were 5 goals down at half time. So Dad sort of said, I'm going to move from centre half back to full forward. And from there, reading articles and us chatting about it, Bailey takes the story up and he says, he ran past myself and Dumpy Hanlon, the Glenorchy centre half back, and Leedham told him, I'm going to kick 4 goals this quarter, Dumpy, and then I'm going back to centre half back. And that is exactly what Dad would have said. So a couple of minutes later, Dad took a mark over the top of all of them, and he said, here comes the first one, Dumpy, just watch. As Dad announced to him, and he did. He kicked the goal. Similar announcements came through the quarter, and he added the 4 goals and had a hand in several more. And he said to Dumpy, this last one will be a flat punt, Dumpy. It won't have a lot of height, but it'll go straight through the middle. And of course it did. So Dad kicked his 4 goals, and he had, as I said, a hand in several others. The quarter ended, and he said, that's it for me now, Dumpy. And he said goodbye, and he went back. And they did win that game. Yeah, that's my favourite story, because it just shows Dad's personality. Like, he had so much confidence in what he could do. He was a showman, and the crowd loved it. And even if you didn't like Dad, you sort of liked it. And I always remember that as when we were growing up, Dad said, I never walked past Ride Street. If he had to go, he'd go right round the oval. He wouldn't. And that was, of course, North Hobart's favourite haunt, Ride Street, and it would just be too much for Dad to walk past there. And he just loved the game, and he had a lot of confidence in what he could do, and he was gifted.
And he had an interesting relationship with the umpires as well, because he always sort of knew that they had to control the game, but I think that irritated him beyond patience sometimes, because he said to me, they want to interfere too much in what I wanted to do, and it started to annoy me. And he'd give a bit of lip back and suck them in, and then so he actually reported an umpire one day for abusive language to him, and he said, it was in Norfolk, and he said, I'm going to report you for abusive language. And John ran up the other end of the umpire, didn't know what to do. He I put him off for the rest of the game, I think. But John had an interesting relationship. It was one of those ones where he knew you had to have umpires and but he was irritated by some of their treatment. He thought he should get a free kick and they didn't. And he'd tell them, he talked to them, he talked to the opposition players, suck them in, or just annoy them when he could, and he'd do it with a massive big smile on his face. He just had so much confidence in what he could do and get away with. It was incredible.
Yeah. And the involvement in football, Pip, is lifelong, isn't it? I mean, it starts at Campbelltown, it moves through North Launceston, it goes to North Hobart, it goes down to Margate for a while as well, and then he ends up being the longest-serving president of the North Hobart Football Club. I remember when I was a young journalist, every time I went to North Hobart, I'd see your dad. He almost lived there, didn't he?
We lived there, Alistair. We lived there. I'm sure we did. And I think that's when you asked earlier tonight why Dad's sort of North Hobart is where his heart is, is because it was one big family. We were one big family, and everyone knew everyone, and they really looked after you. Dad was managing the Ingamar Hotel, for North Hobart, where the players would all stay from all around the state. And it was, they would all come in and they all knew you and they looked after you. And it was just one big family, North Hobart. And I've got some amazing memories and some amazing friendships were formed during that time. And it's sort of, it's something that you never forget.
Was your dad a keeper of mementos from his career? Do you have some special pieces that the family still have that sort of mementos of his playing days?
We do. Mum was really vigilant in keeping everything, and there were scrapbooks and every bit of silverware he got and all the blazers. Dad didn't really care for it. I remember one Father's Day, I'd made a box of stuff since that I had seen through the media, and I'd put it all together. And when he went in as an icon and Hall of the Fame, and it was the Father's Day, and I said, "Oh, Dad, here's your box of stuff." And I said, "Open it, we'll go through it, we'll sit here." He said, No, I'll open that later. He really didn't care that much for it. It was more for him about the footy and the mates he made and the extended families that were formed through some amazing clubs, Campbelltown, North Hobart, Margate. That was a different time in his life, but he didn't care for it much. But we have some wonderful memorabilia between the three of us, and we're very lucky. We've kept it all. Dad probably didn't care for it that much.
Just in closing, when you reflect on your father's life and his career in football, to see him honoured in this way, what's the overriding emotion that your dad's legacy, in some, as much as it always was huge, it's been enhanced and taken again to another level with the national recognition he has now received from the Australian Football Hall of Fame?
For the family, it's a huge honour. It's unbelievable. And, we have been treated so well through this whole process. If Dad were here, he would take it in his stride. He'd sit up on the stage and he'd be interviewed and he'd tell his stories, and he probably wouldn't have a drink till he'd done that. But it's such a huge honour. And I think for Jenny, myself and John, the siblings, it's that he's not here to receive it, or he wasn't here to receive it. So that's probably the underlying thing for the children. But we've all got so many wonderful memories of our life at North Hobart. And as we said, then of course when we were kids, we were driving back up to Campbelltown every Saturday when he was playing up there. And so our life was football. And it was a great part of our life. It's something we'll all remember. And we've got so many funny stories, and we've got so many friends, so many great friends that we've made out of it. But this has been, Dad going into the AFL Hall of Fame has been a huge honour. And, we feel very proud of Dad. And he would be very humble. He would be really humble. But, yeah, it's a huge honour. And we're really sort of proud that he has gone into the Hall of Fame. It was a fabulous night.
The story of John Leedham, a larger-than-life character and champion of Tasmanian football. John now rightfully holds a place among the greats in the Australian Football Hall of Fame. For more episodes of The Heart of It, remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.